What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and today we're going to be diving deep onto Temtem. This was a newly released game just a bit ago that's very interesting because it's essentially just like an indie version of Pokemon. This was made by a very tiny team of passionate developers with almost no budget, but despite these restrictions, I think that in some ways, Temtem is actually better than Pokemon. So what we're going to be doing today is addressing what this game is, how it plays, and which parts of it drive me insane because they kinda suck. Now, first and foremost, let's just kind of address the elephant in the room. Yeah, this is kind of just a ripoff. It's just copying the magic and majesty of Pokemon itself. In fact, there's so many things in this game that are just basically Pokemon, except they change the names. Like things like you go to these big giant places to fight and earn your badges, except they're not gyms. Instead, they're called dojos. Instead of calling your people like a Pokemon trainer, instead, you're a Temtem tamer. Just little small things like that to obviously make sure they don't get sued. But once you get past the little bit of the silliness of that, you really see that this is a very original concept that really kind of shines through and kind of, well, it's very impressive. Let's start off with definitely the best part, which is the fights. This is where things have been very reworked in a fantastic way. So in Temtem, everything is done in 2v2 fights. Random battles, people when you're going against like enemy trainers, everything is 2v2. You get to have your team, they have their team, you fight until people have 0 health and they fall over dead. The big thing here though is that Temtem, well, this game can actually be a little bit tough at times. People don't have a lot of HP. Even your strongest Pokemon with the highest defense, and yes, I'm going to accidentally say Pokemon sometimes in this video, occasionally you will be hit by a single freaking blast that knocks you over dead. So because of this, the game definitely wants you to try and fight smart. And what you can do to try and defend yourself or try and knock out your enemy opponents faster is to think of the fights a little bit more strategically. The biggest thing in Temtem is that having 2 people out at once, this is not just an accident, it's actually part of the entire freaking thing going on. Basically, each of your Temtem, if you're playing well, will complement each other. Like, here's a thing, so there's like elemental types. This is something that's in basically every RPG. Like if you use a fire spell on an ice Temtem, it will melt it and do a bunch of extra damage, right? This is all very obvious stuff. It's things that we all kind of have ingrained into us because we've seen it for years and years. Temtem though takes this old school idea though and kind of walks it one step further by having these combination abilities where basically, when you have your 2 Temtems out, each of them are able to fight on their own. You choose their moves, you actually set up which moves they have, so you can have them as well-rounded fighters. But then if you do something like, if you have 2 of your psychic Temtems out at once, which they call the mental element, they may actually boost each other, making it where individually, each of their turns are going to be more powerful because they're feeding off each other's energy. You may be able to do like 10 or 20 times the attack power for a particular phase because you're somebody who decided to fight smarter instead of just harder. But wait, this actually goes even deeper than that because certain abilities can also be amplified depending on what your partner is. Like at one point I discovered that my main starter Temtem is this dude right here who looks like a floating ghost baby. Well, one of my attacks was like a mental focus thing where I could punch somebody and deal some pretty decent damage to their health and then exhaust them for one turn. Well, if I had a nature partner when the attack went off, he would actually channel their nature energy into himself, and then when I did the attack, not only would it hurt more, but it would exhaust for 2 turns. Basically, if I actually would get certain combinations, people could be so strong in my party, I could fight completely differently. I mean, it really made it where when I found a deadly combo, I wanted to utilize it. It almost felt like a way to try and like weaponize. It was really kind of fun because at times I would find a weaker Temtem that could be so much dramatically stronger if I just used them in a particular way, which to me, that is awesome. Now there's something else about this though that I think is fun, which is the stamina system. So in a lot of this, you're seeing me use just like random attacks like punches or kicks or bites, but there's something else to this, which is this stamina gauge, which is underneath the health bar here. This keeps you from just constantly spamming your biggest, strongest moves, because as you get deeper into this alpha thing here, or this early access, you do start unlocking some pretty strong attacks, and to make it where you don't just keep doing the same move over and over and over again, you actually need to fight carefully. So a lot of times you need to try and think, okay, do I want to save up my stamina and do a giant attack that may blow up the enemy, or do I want to try and wait? And I like this because it makes it where whenever you do dish out these giant attacks like this one, it feels special. It's like, hell yeah, I blew that dude up. But there is something else. If you want to try and play it dangerous, you can choose to use moves early on. If you want to try and use something that takes up more than 100% of your stamina, you can, but instead it will use some of your health. This does add an extra part of strategy for some players that just want to play it kamikaze style, and instead of actually being very slow and methodical, you just try and blow up everybody and drink enough health potions and stuff to try and stay ahead of the degradation. All these different layers to the battles that you have to try and keep in mind while also memorizing these different elemental types and trying to remember all these cool new creatures is such a thrill. I really enjoyed Temtem a lot. But let's talk about what makes this game super, super different, and the biggest thing that I think does make it better than Pokemon itself, which is that this is an MMORPG. It is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. A lot of times when you just see me walking around in these maps, there's players all over the place, other tamers that are on their own little quest, and what's interesting is that these are real people. You can stop, you can wave at them, and more importantly, you can battle them. Whenever you want, you can challenge other players to fights, beating them up, getting their money, getting experience points. It's extra fun to actually find a way to really test yourself against your fellow tamers. But more than this, you can also play the entire game co-op. Yeah, that's right. Instead of just going through this fun adventure by yourself, if you wanted, like my good buddy Jordan Fringe does a bunch of like Pokemon content. He really likes Temtem. If we wanted, we could go through this entire game together. We could go through the whole thing with him controlling one Temtem, me controlling one Temtem, each with our own teams, and just blast through every freaking dojo, every single challenge, everything together back to back. That to me is incredibly cool. I do think that there is a huge glaring downside to this game though that I've been waiting to talk about, and now we have to. There have been a huge amount of server problems so far. Now, obviously, this is the first 24 hours. If you're watching this video in like 6 months or something, well, these probably won't exist. But I'm warning you for if you are watching this when the game just came out. Currently, the game has some issues. The biggest thing is that the servers are occasionally flickering or having problems, and anytime you get kicked offline, you have to log back in. This can sometimes be in the middle of a fight, or if you're just trying to walk into like a Temtem center, or sometimes even when I'm just shopping at a store, suddenly I'm kicked all the way back to the starting screen, and what really sucks is occasionally I end up in a queue. Yeah, that's right. I gotta wait in line to go back into the game. Now, this did not happen a lot, and after I went to bed last night, at about 10 p.m. That way I could wake up at 5 a.m. and play another like 5 hours this morning. And this morning, there was a lot less problems. But as more people started waking up and started flooding into the servers again, I could definitely see that the game was having problems again. this is some of the troubles that online games just have, especially always online games like this, but it still kind of bothers me because so much of this game is just so bright and colorful and beautiful. I mean, I feel like the general aesthetic is amazing. There were so many times where I'd see like a new Temtem for the first time and just be utterly awestruck by how freaking cool it looks, and then suddenly the server crashes and I'm just like, wow, that moment just got ruined. But thankfully this doesn't happen constantly. Okay, have you had a chance to try the Temtem Early Access? Currently, they said that the game is total going to be about 40 hours. This Early Access is about 20 hours. I've put about 12 hours into the Early Access so far, and I feel like I'm probably going to put a ton more into this. I'm really having a blast. But tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please use your Temtem to smash that like button, ring the bell, subscribe, all that business, but do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. All the Temtem are good, but I'll be honest, I don't remember a lot of their names yet. I need to play this for a lot of hours to try and remember their names. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.